Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for being here. Today, we're going to be bringing you a right for you, wrong for you over Riftforce. A interesting little card game coming from Capstone Games, which, I'm going to be honest, when I first saw this in the tiny little box paired up against things like Iberian Gauge and a whole other pile of heavy games coming out of Capstone, I thought to myself, how good could this be, right? That was the question that I presented, and I was heavily skeptical. In this video series, we're going to be breaking down 7 different categories that we look at when trying to decide if we're going to add a game into our own personal game collection, and we're going to let you help you decide if this is one of these games that is right for you or wrong for you. That overview is going to be an overview of the game, a breakdown of the theme, discussion around the accessibility, an analysis of the gameplay and what we like and don't like about it, conversation about the different modes of play, a deep dive into the innovation about whether it is or isn't, and then finally a analysis of the price. Riftforce by Capstone Games is going to be one of their One More Time games, which is a line of games that are designed around the idea of making you go, one more time.
Really?
That's the concept.
I didn't know that was the concept. I saw One More Time on there.
Yeah,
I also saw underneath Capstone says family.
Yeah, you finish playing, it is light enough, quick enough, and easy enough to table that you're like, yeah, let's do it again. So in this game, this is going to be a lane battling game where you're going to be summoning the powers of various different elementals. In the game, you're going to start off by discarding one of these different powerful beings, and then drafting and handing out a series of different elemental cards until both teammates or both players have 4 in their stockpile. Now, every single one of these elementals and every single one of these elemental types are going to have different powers and abilities associated with them. And throughout the course of the game, you're going to be playing down cards into your lanes, then deciding if you want to trigger those abilities. Now, the interesting thing about this is the way that you play cards and the way that you trigger abilities are going to be directly tied to the numbers and types of cards that you have in your hand.
Yeah.
For instance, if I want to play 3 of the same type of elemental, I can do that. Or if I wanted to play 3 different types of elemental that all had the same number, I could do that. If I wanted to play those elementals into the same exact lane, I could do that. Or I could split them up between 3 different lanes. Along with that, when it comes to activating, I could activate 3 of the same type of elemental by discarding the same type. I could activate 3 of the same number by discarding the same number. So there's this push and pull. How much do you put out into the playing field? How far do you exhaust your hand? And when and how do you go ahead and exhaust, check for points, check for lanes which you control, and score and draw your hand back up because you don't draw at the end of your turn. There really is a really nice balance between timing and the mechanisms of this game as you're playing down, using actions, cycling and discarding your hand to take actions and special effects, and doing your very best to climb the totem and make it to 12 power. The moment you score 12 victory points, which come from a variety of different ways, primarily though through owning and controlling lanes and defeating your enemies, the moment you hit 12, you've won the game. So that's a breakdown. That's an overview of what we're doing here. Anything I missed?
I don't think so. There's just some nuances with the rules that I just remember from playing, and I'm like, oh, you could add that there. Oh, you could add that there. But we'll get into it.
Every character, every creature has their own powers and abilities, and that becomes a really interesting combination as you're starting to move, shift, cycle, and how you're deciding.
Based on where they are in the lane, if they're the first card or if they are the last card or if they're somewhere in between, you're going to be placing damage on them and you're really trying to damage them up to their hit points. So you have to have that balance of like keeping high cards, like playing high cards because those are the strongest, but also keeping a 7 in your hand so that then you can activate your 7s. So if let's say you are wanting to activate all your 7s and you have a hand of 3 7s and you play them all out, but if you don't have one left in your hand, you can't activate them all at once. You're going to have to activate them based on the type.
Well, and there's more 5s, more 6s.
Yes,
than
7s
there are
are
7s.
harder to destroy because they're inherently stronger. So you want to get them out, but you also want to keep them back. So it's a really big balance of like what you play when, based on the numbers the other teammate is playing and based on their powers and such.
If you hold out too long to get the right hand, you're going to find that you've either played and sacrificed some weaker units, or you've left your lanes open, which is also how your opponent starts driving victory conditions.
Every single time you're about to draw up, you score the lanes that are empty for yourself, which is a decent chunk of points, as you noticed.
So if you're looking for a lightweight, accessible game with a decent amount of strategy that deals with lane battling and card play, And if you have some other games in that genre that you have enjoyed, this one might be one that you want to pay attention to. It still might be right for you. But from there, let's move over on to the theming of this game. Shira, what's the theming?
I believe the theming is like elemental spirits that you're controlling and you have access to their army and power. That's what I took away from it. Do you have any text?
I mean, on the back here it says, the rifts charge our world. What once seemed lifeless began to rise and awake. Lead an alliance of unique guilds, each controlling powerful elementals. Gain Riftforce by destroying your opponent's elements or controlling the locations along the rift and rise to eternal power. So it's kind of like...
Yeah, I was kind of right. This is the rift.
The earth is splitting. It's releasing some sort of magical essence that allows different people to start taking...
Different elementals can then take that power and use it and destroy each other.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. This is a theme-based channel, and I really, really still don't connect with the theming of this game at all. You actually like it.
I like the theme, and I think it's a huge part of the artwork. The artwork really draws me in. Like, this one looks like a golem, like a huge stone golem. This one looks like who's that character in Moana? Taka, I think. This one looks like the fiery creature from the end of Moana. This one is like a shard of lightning. This is like snow. I really like it. You can find hidden creatures in basically, I think every single one. Like, that's a mouth and head and arms. These are all creatures. I really like the artwork. I really like the theme and the elementals. One thing that I don't like is the text doesn't always seem to correspond. Like, I'd like the actions and powers of that clan to be more tied to its...
Some of them certainly do. Like, the fire does a decent amount of damage and then also damages your own units.
I hear.
Or the assassin is able to move and shift a lot more fluidly than other people. Or the cleric over here can do a little bit of healing. But I would say the vast majority of them, you're about right. They don't directly feel like they tie to their powers and abilities, because most of the powers and abilities are move and or cause damage in some form. There really doesn't stretch out. It really doesn't stretch out beyond that. There aren't a lot of subtext. There aren't things like freeze or shock or burn or any status effects that you're applying.
There's no other actions besides what the cards allow you to do.
It is straight up deal damage, position efficiently, and start maneuvering around the board. And the puzzle of this is going to be, as you link those 4 units together, how does that change the way they interact with each other, right? And that interesting card play and the number play that you have.
I'm just trying to get into gameplay.
I am a bit, because I'm going to be honest, I don't find the theme intriguing here. I don't find there to be a story when I play. I find it to be a very decent number puzzle. I would have enjoyed almost any other theme on top of this. It feels like a bit of a generic elemental style or like high fantasy style covering.
I get that, and I can see where you're coming from.
It doesn't feel like the game was inspired by the theme. It felt instead like they had a really interesting game.
Yeah.
And they were like, what
theme?
do we slap on top of it?
Yeah.
The artwork, I think, is nice, but none of it feels like I know any of the characters. No. None of it feels like I know why we're fighting or why we're here.
Oh, I love the artwork.
So, with that being said, let's go ahead and swing into accessibility.
You didn't do a right for you, wrong for you thing. You usually trail off. Like,
sometimes I get it, sometimes I miss it. Yeah. If you're looking for a game with no theme...
with minimal theme, minimal story...
If you're looking for a game that has pretty artwork and interesting puzzle, but doesn't dwell heavily on the theme beyond that, or you don't mind a game that really layers the theme on top of a really solid set of mechanics, then this one still might be right for you.
Yep.
You're still not quite comfortable with how you do it.
I don't know. You also don't really give me that chance.
Let's swing into accessibility. Accessibility is going to be analysis of how easy this is to get to the table, and not player count, not where we're playing it at, but just what's it like getting this set up? It's a really quick setup.
It's a really quick setup. The only thing I have to say about Teardown is that once you get all your cards mixed into a pile, you then have to unshuffle them.
Which only takes a minute or two, honestly.
It doesn't take too long, but that is a critique I have about the setup Teardown process. I think this is really accessible. As soon as you say what is going on in each arena and how you're just destroying each other, you can quickly learn each character and their unit. You can quickly learn how they act, and then it's up to you to create the best, I don't know what word I'm looking for, but the best chain?
Chainsaw.
Cool. Chainsaw. You're looking for the best chainsaw.
Yeah, so as you're kind of as you're digging into this and looking for how your chainsaw is going to start linking together, you really, really also have a strategic divide with how you're actually like approaching the chopping motion of this game, right?
Yeah.
And so that's going to be the puzzle that you're trying to solve. You are looking here at these cards and trying to analyze and figure out what chains are actually going to link together to make the most efficient way to kind of cut through your opponent. You see how I circled that back around and finally got the chainsaw analogy in there? This is really accessible. It's quick to play. The rulebook is simple to analyze. Everything that you need is on the player aids and on the cards directly in front of you.
They even give you an FAQ at the back of the rulebook if you have some unclarity.
Yeah, I do think, though, that at a certain point, 3 or 4 games down the road, you're going to get a better experience the more times you play it with someone. Because the very first few games we played, I didn't really pay attention to what factions you had. I sort of knew what they could do, but I wasn't really worried about it. It wasn't until I played the factions myself and then watched my opponent take them, like, for instance, the gem over here that does 4 damage, but also gives me a victory point if I destroy it. I knew at that point, because I'd not only played them, I was now playing against them, to focus on them, target them, watch them destroy my units, but score a lot of points by taking them out as well. So this is really going to benefit repeated plays, and I don't think you're going to fully know or get a good experience of the game until you've sat down multiple times. That being said, it is very accessible, it is easy to teach and learn, and if you're looking for a game that really lines up with the concept of one more time,
then this game might be right for you.
You're trying so hard.
I did it.
Any of the weird scripted moments is not where Shira excels. We're going to swing over to gameplay. This is not a conversation about the gameplay specifically, but the highs and lows for us. What we like, what we don't like, where we think other people might fall off or get on the bandwagon.
So there are some factions, that's the word I'm going to use, that seem to be stronger than others. There usually is a counterbalance to it with that faction, like this pink one that he's mentioning. So, plays 4 damage on the first enemy. When you have, it really can knock out one enemy within 2 shots.
You can wipe a 5 easily.
You can wipe a 5 easily. If that 5 especially has 1 damage from someone else, that 5 is knocked out. 6s and 7s are a little harder, but really not that much. However, the opposite end of it is that when this gets destroyed, your opponent gets 2 points. So while it's easy to destroy your opponent's forces, once they get their legs to them and they're starting to hit back, they can get a lot of points. But I still feel like this one, and then there's one more that does 4 damage. This one doesn't really have such a mitigating factor. If there's damage on the last enemy, you can place 4 more on it. Otherwise, you just place 1. I think the ones that deal out 4...
It does the final blow.
I think the ones that deal out 4 are just so powerful.
But you always get a chance to draft your characters at the beginning. And so if you're strategically trying to play against your opponent, I think there is some flexibility in how you select those, because you're ignoring the place 3 damage consistently.
I hear.
You're also ignoring the option for some of our Hurricane places 1 damage on each one in the row, which could be 3 or 4 damage potentially.
I hear. Yeah. I don't know, I just feel like if someone grabs this pair, they're pretty unbeatable.
I'd be curious. I'd be curious to specifically set it up to test that. Yeah. We haven't done that yet. Yeah. We have been very close in all the games we've played so far. And so from my reading of it, I don't know that it's unbalanced. The areas that I know I've lost has been when strategically I felt like I wasn't quite as sound. I think this is a really great puzzle. Like I said earlier when it came to the theme, I think they had a really strong game that was fun to play, and then they put something on top of it, which is a negative for me, who's a very thematic player, but for a lot of you, that kind of rating system, that review style, that is going to be a positive. That means they had a really good, strong, solid mechanics engine, and that's where they built this game out from. Yeah. I think this game is absolutely lovely. The card play and the decision point between what you play, what you put down on the table, what you're going to draw back up when you draw cards, instead of pushing your turn to the very limit of what you can utilize, all of that is so rewarding, and usually the victory point, the very final swing of the game, comes down to a strategic moment where I knew I made a misstep or I left my door open. It also plays fast and efficient.
Plays fast and efficient. I like that it's a 2-player head-to-head. That's one of my favorite categories. I like that dilemma of, you start out with 7 cards in your hand, and you're like, do I play 3, and then have to draw up, but risk getting taken down?
Sure.
Drawing, that
decision... Do I play 3 and then activate them multiple times? Continue kind of pushing the front ground.
That decision to draw up is crucial.
It's very big.
Because as soon as you draw up, your opponent can use that next turn to kind of take you out.
They could use it to take it out, or they could use it as a respite to draw up themselves.
Yeah, exactly. It's really interesting, the drawing up.
The weak part in this game, I think, my perception of it, is going to be, honestly, the degree of variability that's here. I think this is a game.
A weakness?
I think this is a game that is begging for more characters, begging for more powers.
Oh, gotcha.
I like the card play a lot, but I don't know after 10 plays or so that I really want to be getting this one back down to the table.
Yeah.
I think it then falls a little bit lower on my shelf, and I might be drawing some other more heavy lane battlers. This is a great introduction into the lane battle concept and system. I don't think it lasts beyond a certain point.
What are some other lane battlers? Do you know any off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, it's hard because I'm really, really bad at terms. There's an Egyptian one that I covered a while back that deals with, it's sort of a little bit of a deck builder in a sense where you're fighting Egyptian gods back and forth. I think, I can't even
It's okay. I was just curious because I think this was one of my first encounters with a lane battler, and
there's Crimson Company, which is going to be another ability-driven lane one where each character that you're placing down has a very strong ability in nature with them. There's Air, Land, and Sea, which is going to be a lane battler because you're playing in 3.
I have played that one,
Yeah, and so there's a few of those conceptual type of games.
Yeah, I do think if I'm comparing this to Air, Land, and Sea is going to win out every day.
Yeah, or even either way, Siege Storm. Yeah. There's quite a few that are there. I'm trying to recover my status as well. I do play games, I promise. I just don't remember what they're called. So that's going to be the weak part for me. I think the puzzle's really great. I think it's a great introduction into this hobby space. However, I do think that as you grow up in the lane battling system, you're going to move on from this one to a few other games. I don't think you stop here. Whereas something like Air, Land, and Sea, I think is such a solid 5-minute little puzzle might pause there.
Yeah, it's so quick. You don't have to play through every single round. You can stop at any point in that. It's also a much smaller box, easier to store, easier to bring along with you.
But that being said, I would be perfectly happy to have both of these on my shelf.
Yeah.
And I would be perfectly happy to tell someone to go from a game like that into a game like this, which adds a little bit more open-ended kind of strategy. So, if you're looking for a game that is... What do we say across this bridge? If you're looking for a game that is strategically interesting, that gives you a lot of very, very crunchy decisions, that the points can come down to very tight mistakes or accomplishments from you and your opponent, this one might be great for you. If you're looking for a game that's going to last on your shelf for a really long time, that you can get maybe 100 plays of and still feel like you're searching for more,
this game might be wrong for you.
It might not hold up. That being said, let's swing over to modes of play, and I think this is just 2-player.
It's just 2-player.
This is just 2-player. It doesn't apologize for it. It doesn't try to create excuses for it. And I think it's perfectly fine being that.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a quickest
Any
segment.
other modes of play? I mean, it's a very quick segment. There aren't variations the way you play. There's no
solo mode.
The biggest difference is going to be as you learn the game better, you will start picking characters that start linking together. Doing something like, let me see if I can beat you if I have the most powerful creatures in the game. Or let me see what happens if I take the creatures that move really well so I can start dodging and filtering around. And that's a really interesting question. It's a cool premise, and the strategy has evolved the more times we sat down to play. I mean, right now, I want to sit down, I want to give you the most powerful, and I want to see if you can win.
I do want to try it.
So, modes of play are not going to be any variation when it comes to the types of modes to play. If you're looking for a 2-player game, you should consider this. If you're looking for a solo, 3, 4, or any sort of variation there, this is not going to be one you're looking for. That being said, this game does have strategy that evolves while you play, and that alone could make it
a lot of strategy that as you play.
That alone could make it.
That could alone make it.
It could make it.
Right for you.
Right for you. Yes.
Oh, I was concentrating so hard on the next thought that I had. And I was about to ask, I think most lane battlers are only going to be 2 players.
Most of them will be. Yes, most of them will be. That being said, it is clear that she listens to me about as often as you, the audience, listen to me. And if you've made it to this part, leave a comment down below just saying, right for you, to show that you got the cue. Swing over into innovation. This is going to be one of the hardest questions here because we really have to analyze it based off our own personal experience. We don't have knowledge of games we haven't played, and we don't have knowledge of when games came out in relation to each other. So, from my stance, based on the lane battlers that I've played, the only thing that I might say might be innovative here is the interesting hand and card play, is the pressure point of when you draw up, how much you play down, and how you trigger your cards. That being said, I do not think that alone is innovative.
Yeah.
I think this game does a really good job at establishing a lane battler. It probably does some things that are unique in this space, but I don't think the game itself is innovative, and I don't know that it needs to be.
I don't think it needs to be. I think it puts together a couple different strategies and tactics, and the product is pretty great.
Yeah.
But I don't think it needs to be especially innovative. I do agree that the tension point of trying to decide what to play, when and where, and then when to draw up is probably the most unique aspect.
Yeah, and so if you're a collector that's looking for a game that's going to add something intrinsically new into your shelf, I don't think this one's going to do that. But I also don't think it needs to. If you enjoy lane battlers and you already have 2 or 3 on your collection that you get back to the table repeatedly, I see no reason why Riftforce would not be added to that collection and start joining in on that cyclical nature. Finally, we're going to take a look at price, and I actually don't know this.
I was going to ask you,
I'm going to
mid-video,
swing
do you
over.
know the price point for this?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and check. So I'm just going to go right to Google.
Riftforce.
Riftforce board game, and let's see. So I'm going to ask you first, where do you think this is priced, and what would you pay for it? What do you think's fair?
All right. I think it is priced in the $30 to $40 range.
Really?
Is that low or high?
If you look at the size of the box, a lot of the board game hobby can be judged by the size of the box. We've talked about this before with expansions that seem to be
I was
empty.
about to say, what I wouldn't pay more than 20.
Okay. So one of the clues that you can get to the price of a game is going to be how empty the box is. Like, if a box sells a game more than the game itself sells the game. You'll have expansions that have nothing inside of them because they wouldn't sell for as high of a price tag because you don't feel like you're getting as much value as a consumer. So for instance, and I don't mean to be beating up on Riftforce here, but Riftforce does not need the extra space.
No.
All Riftforce is...
All it needs is a deck of cards and a bag of tokens.
It's a deck of cards with a little bit more room. You could bundle Riftforce in a box about this size. However, if you did that, this game would only sell for probably about $10, maybe $12. You'd see it as like a grab-and-go game, not as a legitimate board game. You're right on the money. This is a $20, $22 game.
Okay.
I think the market will probably bring it down to about $15 over the course of the next 6 months or so.
All right.
But honestly, I'm not upset at this being a $15 to $20 game.
I think that's appropriate.
I'd be perfectly happy handing over a $20 bill to have this in my collection.
5 to 10 games of it, that's boiling down to $4 a play. I mean, you do a lot more than $4 for so many different activities.
You can 100% get more out of that than that. I mean, that's just at the minimum. You're going to be walking away with 10 games.
Yeah, that's $2 a game.
Yeah, which is fantastic. This really has a lot of value for the size that you're getting and for the scale of game you're getting. I'm not upset about that price point. If it was in the $30 range, $40 range, I think you're pushing.
Sometimes games get put out as like much more expensive than I thought I would pay for.
I would be happy to pay $35, $40 for this if you about doubled the amount of characters that we had on the table here.
Yeah.
That would be the puzzle
fair.
for me.
I don't think I would pay more than $35. But if you double the amount of characters, and that's literally doubling the amount of content.
Give me more variability, more things to start pairing and linking together. So there you have it. If you're looking for a game that is not heavily thematic, but has a really strong mechanics engine underneath that deals with lane battling, plays as 2 players, and only costs you about $15 to $20 depending on the marketplace you get it from.
This game will be right for you. I got it.
It very much might be right for you. That being said, if you made it this part of the video, that means our channel is absolutely...
wrong for you.
Wrong for you. Yes, please make sure you unsubscribe down below and leave a comment letting us know why you're never watching a video again. And with all that being said...
whatever the case, whatever you do,
remember to do the important thing. Get out and play some games. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.